Now, as I look around me, funny enough, where I first started making these videos in a graveyard, I'm thinking, contemplating, and I feel that I mentioned something in a recent video that warrants further discussion or clarification. Because if we perceive the world in terms of duality, then we split it up and divide it and somehow feel separate. And if we feel separation from the rest of creation, and then there's what we can call a feeling of a void. If we're not careful and conscious, we can try to fill that void with something outside, something in the world, something outside of our own existence, something outside of the living presence that animates us and animates our intelligence. And of course, there's nothing fundamentally outside of it, because it is everything. It is everything that seems to be happening. We are that presence, but if we allow our mind to perceive the world in terms of duality and split it up, we feel separate from that presence. And thus, we may try to fill that feeling of separateness, that feeling of voidness, with some pleasure in the future. The world may tempt us and say, hey, if you take this pleasure, you'll feel better. That may be true. For a few moments at least. We gotta remember that that's temporary. That pleasure is ever fleeting. But the presence is the constant. The witness is the constant. And when we see ourselves as being at best the witness of this divine concordance, the cosmos, then naturally we'll create a distance between what is body and mind. Because body is an expression of mind, right? They're not separate. Nothing is separate in existence. Our existence is not separate from the next person's existence. It's all one existence. And so, when we understand this and we feel this, we feel connected to that presence, there's no sense of separation from creation, then naturally we'll live with sort of a detachedness, right? And that doesn't mean we're not involved wholeheartedly with the world, that we don't feel part of this wonderful whole, but we can witness and inwardly experience all duality, whether good or evil, or pleasure or pain. We can experience all duality with calmness, and at the same time consciously remove ourselves from their perceived power with that calmness, with that rootedness and groundedness in the presence of our own existence. And we won't be tempted. The world can't tempt us, because temptation loses its flavor. Pleasure in the future loses its flavor, because we're so grounded in the moment now, which is the only place where the living God is found, right? The presence of the living God is nowhere other than now. So when we understand this conceptually, naturally we'll mold our lives in such a way, and it's our responsibility, that we make that the priority, where we want to perpetually feel that feeling of connectedness viscerally. And so, make this video in relation, like I said, to a previous video entitled Beyond Good and Evil, where I speak a little bit about duality as well, which I'll link down below, because we really want to understand that we're not the mind. The mind is a tool. Thought is a tool. But it seems that the majority of humanity doesn't understand that. When I point to that, the word tree is pointing to something. It's a thought. The thoughts are out there. And they arise from a certain silence. The silence, the space, you could say the presence between thoughts. And if we're not careful, we'll confuse the thought for the symbol. The thought for the artifact. That's the artifact. But we got to understand that before language and before concepts entered humanity, forgive the noise, the sacred is. Before Abraham was, I am. Right? So, before we started dividing the world with language and identifying with the mind, there was a time where you could say in Eden consciousness, where humanity was beyond the concept of time, the duality of linearity, and thinking of ourselves separately. There was a certain sense of oneness with existence and connectedness with the rest of humanity. And so I make this simply for that reason. This is out here feeling that connectedness, and I want to share this. Speak a little bit on it. Shed some light on it. And funny, as I say that, the sun is shining in the background, beautiful blue sky. You don't have to know why. You don't have to try to figure out the how. Because when we're rooted in that presence, there's a certain sense of confidence, and a certain clarity, and a certain certainty. And we may have a future goal, but when we're in that presence, there's nowhere to go. And since we have that confidence, we are that confidence, we can let go. We can let go of the goal. Be detached from it. Be detached from the outcome. Because there's the inner certainty that, it must manifest. Because I'm living from a high vibration, a high frequency. And with that clarity, we see that desire actually kind of gets in the way of the outcome. When we let go of the desire, it clears the way for it to manifest, for it to happen. We may erroneously believe that if I don't desire this, it's not going to happen. But actually, most of the time, it's a desire that gets in the way. When we're kind of free, whatever happens, then that clears that way for that presence to manifest through us. We become a channel, a vessel that's open to do the will of unconditioned love, do the will of God. That's really found nowhere other than now. It's found when there's a certain willingness to live with that calmness and detachedness and simultaneous involvement, engagement with the world around us. When I say engagement, I don't mean enslavement. I don't mean the enslavement to entertainment that many of us may feel, because the senses are very strong. The 5 senses are strong. And like I said in the last video, if there's a person sitting under a tree across from you, you're observing them. We can observe the thoughts, observe the emotions, observe the feelings as they arise, because we're not them. We're the loving witness, right? And so we're observing this person sitting across from us, and we notice they're kind of uncomfortable. They may be constantly shifting because they haven't taken time to sit in that stillness, haven't given their time to God, because they're always chasing something outside of themselves. And you're sitting there in the joy, drunk in nature. You feel like you could sit there forever. And when you get up, you go off in the world and you create with that joy. In your work, everything that you do is an expression of that joy. And you notice this other person doesn't seem to feel the same way. When they get up, they go off in their day and they try to distract themselves from that uncomfortability with some, let's say again, some pleasure. And yes, they may feel pleasure temporarily, but what that does is it sets up a cycle, a program that, hey, when I feel this way, I'm going to go off and seek some pleasure. Then what that does is it takes them out of the presence, because they get enslaved to the program that says, hey, when I feel this way, if I do this, I'll feel better. But then they're always chasing something outside of themselves to feel better, instead of taking the time to sit now and finding that joy of existence. Which is always with us, nevertheless. I was hoping to make this video without, noise in the background. Bring you some peace to your day. Bring you some joy. Bring you some light. Anyway, it is what it is. Not going to try to control it. Accept it. Acknowledge it. Realize there is always that silence behind the seeming chaos. Love you guys. Till next time. Take care and God bless. Take some time. Take some time for yourself. When I say yourself, I'm not talking about your ego. I'm talking about the real you. The energy, the presence that is you. Take some time for that. Really sit with it. Go within. Do some soul searching.